street kid playing Mama, I'm Coming Home. When suddenly Ozzy Osbourne showed up, Los Angeles shimmered that afternoon like a mirage built on noise. Heat rose from the pavement in waves, bending sunlight into golden smoke, while the restless hum of Hollywood Boulevard pulsed like a tired heartbeat. Buskers played in every corner, snare drums made from plastic buckets, saxophones that screeched out Sinatra, and dancers spinning under the shadows of tourist buses. Among them, a 12-year-old boy named Miguel Rodriguez tightened the strings on his scratched red guitar. The body of the instrument bore scars from years of use, thin cracks across the varnish like veins, proof that it had lived a life as hard as his own. The boy's black hair clung to his forehead in the heat, but his dark eyes carried something unbreakable. For 3 months straight, Miguel had come here every Saturday, planting himself between a souvenir shop and a taco stand. It wasn't for attention, though. The tourists sometimes smiled and tossed him coins. He played for something deeper, for his father, who had died 2 years ago in a factory accident that left the family shattered. Since that day, music had become his bridge back to hope. Every coin that landed in his guitar case helped pay for his weekly lesson at a small community center. Every note he played was a letter to the man he missed. And today, the letter began with the first trembling chords of Mama, I'm Coming Home. He had practiced the song all morning, listening to it again and again through cracked headphones connected to a cheap MP3 player. The track hissed with static, but the melody still carried that strange, heavy tenderness that only Ozzy Osbourne could summon, like pain learning how to love again. Miguel took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and began. The guitar's sound was raw, imperfect, but full of something money couldn't buy: truth. His voice joined, soft and cracked but pure. Times have changed, and times are strange. People slowed down. A couple stopped mid-argument. A child tugged on his mother's sleeve to point. Even a street performer juggling torches paused, eyes narrowing as if recognizing sincerity in a city built on performance. Miguel didn't notice any of them. His lips moved like a prayer. Every line carried the weight of missing his father. Every word was a whisper to heaven. Come home, Papa. Just once more. Far down the street, a black Mercedes Maybach crawled through traffic. Inside sat a man who had lived too many lifetimes to count. His long silver-gray hair fell past his shoulders, the faint reflection of tattoos glinting beneath his sleeves. Ozzy Osbourne leaned back in the seat, half lost in thought, the boulevard a blur of lights and noise beyond the tinted glass. Los Angeles never really slept, but to Ozzy, it had begun to feel like a ghost of itself, a glittering carnival that forgot what it celebrated. He'd spent half a century living inside the noise: stadiums, hotels, interviews, camera flashes. But sometimes, like now, the silence between those moments became too loud. And then, from the open window, he heard it. The notes drifted in faintly at first, then grew stronger, familiar, honest, raw. Mama, I'm coming home. Ozzy froze. The air inside the car shifted. Stop, he said suddenly, his voice cutting through the air. The driver looked back. Sir, stop the car. That's my song. The Mercedes eased to the curb, tires crunching softly against the edge of the street. Ozzy lowered the window completely. Across the road, in the merciless sunlight, he saw a boy, barely 12, playing the melody with his eyes closed. The guitar was too big for him, the amp tiny, but the sound, God, the sound, hit like a confession. Something stirred in Ozzy's chest. A feeling he hadn't known in years. Recognition. Not of the song, but of the soul behind it. Pull over here, Ozzy murmured. The driver hesitated. You sure, sir? Ozzy smiled faintly. Aye. Something inside tells me I need to meet that kid. He stepped out, adjusting his black leather coat, the heat hitting him like a wall. His silver rings caught the light. A few people on the sidewalk gasped softly, whispering, Is that him? Is that Ozzy Osbourne? But Ozzy didn't notice. His focus stayed on the boy, on the way those small hands trembled, yet refused to stop playing. He stood there listening as Miguel reached the song's final verse. Mama, I'm coming home. When the last note faded, applause erupted. Miguel opened his eyes, startled, and saw a man in black standing before him, smiling behind dark glasses. At first, he thought it was a trick of the light. Another tourist, another look-alike. But then the man reached out a hand and said in that unmistakable Birmingham accent, "Very impressive, mate. I wrote this song, you know, but you played it better than I ever did." Miguel's heart stopped. His mouth fell open. You're Ozzy Osbourne." Ozzy chuckled, removing his sunglasses so the boy could see his kind, time-worn eyes. "That's me, lad. And you were playing my song. Bloody brilliantly, too." Miguel almost dropped his guitar. His breath hitched. "I can't believe this. I listen to your music every day. My father, The boy's voice faltered, tears catching in his throat. "He died 2 years ago. But when I play your songs, it feels like he's still here. Especially this one." The words hit Ozzy like a chord struck deep within. He remembered the day he wrote, "Mama, I'm coming home." Sharon had been sick then, and he'd poured every ounce of fear and love into that melody. To hear it now, through the voice of a grieving child, it undid him. He knelt slowly, ignoring the flash of cameras from gathering tourists. "What's your name, son?" "Miguel Rodriguez, sir." "Miguel," Ozzy repeated softly. "You've got a gift, mate. When I was your age, I could barely hold a tune. But you play with your heart. That's rare." He reached out and gently took the boy's guitar. The neck was worn smooth from use, the strings slightly rusted, but it was loved. Ozzy strummed a soft chord, tuning it by ear. "Even through the cheap amp, it sang true. See?" he said, handing it back. "It's not the guitar that matters, it's the heart behind it." "And yours is pure gold." Miguel swallowed hard. "My uncle gave me this after my dad passed. It's all I have left of him." Ozzy nodded slowly, eyes glistening. "Then it's priceless, lad. Keep playing. Don't ever stop." By now, the crowd around them had grown. Tourists, locals, street vendors, all holding up phones, recording. But inside that circle, there was silence. Two souls, one weathered by fame, one born of struggle, speaking through a shared language, music. Ozzy reached into his pocket and pulled out a black guitar pick engraved with his initials. He pressed it into Miguel's palm. "Here, use this from now on. And remember, real musicians don't play with their fingers. They play with their hearts." Miguel stared at it as though holding a piece of heaven. His lip quivered. "Thank you, Mr. Osbourne. This means everything." Ozzy smiled. "Nah, kid. You gave me more than I gave you. You reminded me why I started making music in the first place." Then, with a sudden spark in his eyes, Ozzy turned to the crowd and raised his voice. "This kid's the real deal," he shouted. "Miguel Rodriguez, remember that name. You'll be buying tickets to his shows one day." The crowd erupted in cheers. Miguel's cheeks burned red as he wiped at his tears. Ozzy grinned, turned back to him and said, "What do you say, mate? One more time? Let's give them a proper version." Miguel blinked. "You mean, play with you?" Ozzy winked. "Aye, you play. I'll sing." Miguel's fingers trembled as he retuned the guitar. His heart thundered in his chest, but when he looked up, Ozzy was already standing beside him, smiling like an old friend. Then, on that blazing summer afternoon, Hollywood Boulevard fell silent. Miguel struck the first chord. Ozzy began to sing. Times have changed and times are strange. People stopped mid-step. Drivers leaned out of car windows. Shops turned off their music. The street itself seemed to pause. The crowd thickened, tourists crying, strangers hugging, a cameraman filming through tears. The voice of a legend blended with the trembling guitar of a child, and for 4 minutes, the world remembered what music was for, to heal, to connect, to say what words cannot. When the last line came, "Mama, I'm coming home," Ozzy lifted his hand toward the boy and together they strummed the final chord. Silence, then thunder. Applause, cheers, cries of disbelief. Ozzy put his arm around Miguel's shoulders. "This lad," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "is proof that music lives forever. And so do the people we love." Miguel wept openly, clutching the guitar pick in his hand. It was, without question, the most beautiful day of his life. Please subscribe to Voices of Darkness YouTube channel and like and share this video with your friends. Tell us in the comments, do you love Ozzy Osbourne? The boulevard took a long breath after the duet, like a tide slowly pulling back from shore. People wiped their eyes and began to speak again in hushed voices. A tourist bus edged forward. A shopkeeper turned his sign back to open. Yet in the small circle where a legend and a boy stood shoulder to shoulder, the air still thrummed with something holy, like the echo after a church bell. A world-famous voice and a trembling 12-year-old had just stopped Hollywood in daylight, and now came the part no one would film. what kindness sounds like when the microphones go quiet. Please subscribe to Voices of Darkness, like and share this video with your friends, and tell us in the comments, do you love Ozzy Osbourne? Ozzy squeezed Miguel's shoulder once, steady and warm. "Breathe, lad," he murmured. "It's only music and that's everything." Miguel nodded, but his chest was sparking. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. The street felt tilted under his shoes, as if the earth itself had leaned closer to listen. He clutched the black guitar pick like a life raft. "Let's sit," Ozzy said, already folding himself down onto the warm concrete curb as though he'd done it 1,000 times. Cameras raised, then lowered in surprise. What kind of star sits on a sidewalk after making the whole boulevard cry? Miguel sat beside him, knees touching the scuffed guitar case. He swallowed. "Sir, Mr. Osbourne, Ozzy," the man corrected gently. "Or mate." "I answer to both." Miguel laughed a little, the sound breaking like sunlight through cloud. "Ozzy," he whispered, testing the word, like he'd just been allowed to rename a constellation across from them. The crowd kept its distance, an instinctive reverence guiding strangers to form a living boundary. A girl in a denim jacket passed 2 bottles of water through the circle. "For the artists," she said, voice trembling. Ozzy accepted them with a grateful nod and handed one to Miguel. "Tell me about the Red Warrior," Ozzy said, nodding at the guitar. "Where'd you find it?" "My uncle," Miguel said, twisting the cap off the bottle. "After my father died, he gave it to me. Said it had good bones, even if the paint was tired." He smiled, brushing a thumb over a scar in the finish. "It buzzes on the D string if I hit it too hard. My teacher says that's character. That's wisdom," Ozzy said. "Instruments and people both sing better when they've survived something." A hush fell again around them. Even the traffic seemed to soften its voice. Ozzy's sunglasses hung from the collar of his black shirt now. Without them, his eyes looked younger, tired in the way real kindness often is. "How long you been playing out here?" 3 months, Miguel said. "Every Saturday. Some days are good. Some days it's just me and the pavement." He ducked his head. "Today was the best day of my life." Ozzy looked at him a long, quiet moment, the sort of gaze you only get from someone who understands the cost behind a sentence. "I've had a few of those days," he said. "They're always built on the hard ones. Did you ever—" Miguel began, then stopped. It felt almost illegal to ask. "Did you ever feel like you didn't belong on the stage they gave you?" Ozzy's mouth tilted. "Most nights. I came from noise and factory floors. First time I walked into a proper studio, I thought they'd hand me a broom. But here's the trick, Miguel. If a room makes you feel small, fill it with the thing only you can bring. The room shrinks to fit you." Miguel stared. "You make it sound simple." "It isn't," Ozzy said. "But truthful things rarely are." A man in a white apron emerged from the taco stand, wiped his hands, and brought a paper boat piled with fresh chips. "For the kid," he said. Then, with a shy half-bow to Ozzy, "For the legend." Ozzy took one, crunchy and hot, and laughed. Fame had always brought him champagne in gold rooms. This, salt, grease, daylight, a boy, tasted like truth. "Where's your mum today?" Ozzy asked. "Cleaning houses," Miguel said, eyes on the chips. "She works Saturdays, sometimes Sundays. She says one day she'll take a day off and listen to me play like my dad used to." He swallowed. "I send her videos. It's not the same." Ozzy nodded, that small ache flickering across his face. "Love rarely arrives the way we want, but it arrives." He glanced at the little amp, the tangled cable, the thrift store headphones looped around the handle. "You're saving for better gear?" "Lessons first," Miguel said. "Mrs. Patel at the community center charges less if I sweep the floor after class. I figure if I learn right, the gear can wait." Ozzy threw back his head and laughed, not at the boy, but with the joy of recognition. "You're dangerous, Miguel. People who understand priorities move mountains." A news camera eased closer. A producer whispered into a phone. Across the street, a blown-out stereo began playing Crazy Train, too loud, too tinny. Miguel flinched at the noise, and Ozzy shot the stereo a playful squint like a cowboy daring the sun to blink. "Tell me about your dad," Ozzy said, soft again. "If you don't mind me asking." Miguel traced the edge of the pick with his nail. "He smelled like motor oil and cinnamon gum. He worked second shift at the plant. He promised he'd take me to a concert when I turned 13. The boy's voice thinned but did not break. "He never got the chance." Ozzy's hand hovered, then settled over the guitar's headstock. Careful, respectful, like you touch a grave with flowers. Then we'll bring the concert to you, he said. As many as you need. Miguel turned that over and tucked it into a pocket of his heart he kept for impossible promises. A woman with silver hair edged into the circle and lifted a Polaroid camera. I used to see you at the whiskey, she told Ozzy. You were trouble and a lullaby at the same time. She snapped a photo, waved it, and pressed it into Miguel's hand. The image ghosted up from gray. 2 figures on a curb, one boy, one legend, caught mid-laughter. Proof for later that this wasn't a heat mirage dream. Can I ask something? Miguel said. On the record. Off the record. I don't know the difference. Ask, Ozzy said. Why were you listening? You have... He gestured vaguely at the car, the world, everything. I don't, Ozzy said. Not the way people mean it. The older I get, the more I want the first thing that made me breathe like it mattered. He tapped his chest. That thing is honesty and a melody. Your playing had it. I heard home in your hands. Miguel looked down, blinking quickly. The black pick warmed in his fist like it had a pulse. Behind them, the driver stepped closer, almost apologetic. Sir, we should... He stopped when Ozzy lifted one finger. Not the rude one, the gentle one that asks time to slow. Got anywhere to be right now, Miguel? Ozzy asked. Only here, Miguel said. For as long as the sun lets me. Good, Ozzy said, pushing to his feet. Because I'm buying you a fresh set of strings and a cold soda. Non-negotiable. They crossed to a tiny music shop 2 doors down, the kind that survives in a city of giants by smelling like real wood and old songs. A bell over the door rang, delicate as a bird. The owner, a woman with coil-tight curls and a t-shirt that read, Support Local Noise, looked up, mouth opening, then wisely closing. She smiled at Miguel first. What are we fixing? She asked. D-string buzz, Miguel said, trying to sound casual and failing adorably. And maybe, everything. We can improve everything for less than $20 and a promise to practice, she said. Then she glanced at Ozzy's face and grinned. I have your records behind the counter because the big display keeps getting stolen. Buy another, Ozzy said, sliding his card across without looking at the price tag of anything. And sell this young man the best set of strings that guitar can handle. While she restrung the Red Warrior at the bench, Ozzy wandered the narrow aisles with Miguel. He took down a battered Les Paul from the wall, its finish spider-webbed with checking, like ice that learned to sing. He strummed a soft E, just enough to wake the room. You'll meet a lot of people who tell you how to do what you love, he said. Listen to the ones who ask you why. Why do you? Miguel asked. Because when I don't, Ozzy said, setting the Les Paul back as gently as a sleeping child. I forget who I am. They left the shop with a new pack of strings, a small bottle of lemon oil for the fretboard, and a sticker the owner insisted on giving Miguel that simply read, Play honest. The crowd outside had grown patient. It made a path. Will you come back? Miguel asked when they reached the curb again. He didn't mean today. He meant to this moment, this feeling. I never left, Ozzy said, tapping 2 fingers over the boy's heart. Once music stakes a claim, it builds a country. You get to live there. A woman from the local news stepped forward at last, polite. Mr. Osbourne, may we... just a word on camera? It would mean, I'll give you 1 sentence, Ozzy said. Make it clean. She nodded, red light blooming on the camera's face. Mr. Osbourne, why stop the car for a street performance? Because sometimes the truest stage is hot pavement, Ozzy said, looking not at the lens but at Miguel. And because genius often starts with a borrowed amp and a broken heart. The reporter mouthed, Thank you, and backed away as if from a fragile animal you don't want to spook. Ozzy turned, slipped a card from his wallet, flipped it, and, with a pen he borrowed from the taco stand man, wrote a number on the back. He put the card into Miguel's case, under the strap as if anchoring it against wind. Call me Monday morning, he said. We'll talk schools, proper gear, time to practice without worrying about rent. I've got a charity that likes putting kindling under fire. Miguel stared. Is this really happening? Reality, Ozzy said deadpan, is just a genre. We can write a better one. Miguel laughed through a tear. I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep your promises to yourself, Ozzy answered. That's the only vow I care about. For a while they just sat again, letting the boulevard fold back into its ordinary groove. A tourist boy about 6 crept forward, hiding behind his father's knee, and blurted, I like the sad song. Miguel bent down to his level. It's a happy one too, he said. Sometimes coming home means remembering someone loved you. Ozzy watched that exchange like a man blessed twice in 1 hour. His own eyes shone. All right, Red Warrior, he said at last, tapping the guitar case. One more for the road. Your choice. Miguel thought of all the riffs he loved, all the licks he couldn't yet play clean. Then he did the brave thing. He chose something simple he could tell the truth with. He hit a G, then a C, let them ring, no rush, the spaces between like breath. He sang a scrap of a melody he'd been writing in the back of his math notebook. Words not ready yet, but the shape of them was home. Ozzy didn't sing this time. He listened, eyes closed, the way people lean toward the sea. When the little song finished, he opened them and nodded once, solemn and proud. There he is, he said. Miguel Rodriguez, songwriter. The name hung above the sidewalk as if carved there by light. The driver cleared his throat again, less apologetic now, more human. Sir, rehearsal. Duty calls, Ozzy said, climbing to his feet with a small theatrical groan. Then he leaned down until he and Miguel shared breath. 2 things. Rest your hands tonight. And on Monday, call. I will, Miguel said. I swear. Ozzy clasped their hands together, boy's fingers ink-smudged, man's rings cool and heavy. Then we're in business. He turned to the circle of strangers. Be good to this lad, he announced. He's carrying something we all need. They cheered, not the stadium cheer, but the neighborhood kind, the sound of a block party when the grill is hot and the sky forgives you for living. The black Mercedes eased back to the curb. Ozzy paused with the door open and looked over his shoulder. Miguel! Yeah? Ozzy pointed to his own chest. Come home to your music every day, he said. Even when the world is noisy. The door shut. The car slid away, absorbed by traffic, by the long bright throat of the city. Miguel stood very still. Then he sat, alone again and not alone, and wiped the dust from his guitar the way you straighten a photograph on a mantel. The crowd thinned. The sun angled. He picked up the pick, the initials already his luck, and placed it between 2 fingers like a promise. Then he began to play scales as slowly as a prayer. Somewhere blocks away, inside a moving car, a man in black closed his eyes and smiled, hearing them. If this chapter touched you, please subscribe to Voices of Darkness, like and share this video with your friends, and tell us in the comments, do you love Ozzy Osbourne?